morning. I hope you're going to hear me, all right? There is something that I was reading that I impressed my mind for myself. I don't know about you. And it's taken from 3 SM 199, paragraph 2. And it says, God will not accept a willful, imperfect obedience. Now I thought about that. We are not rendering perfect obedience. But this says a willful, imperfect obedience. Now, this is what Saul did. He rendered a willful, imperfect obedience, partial obedience. Now, you're familiar with this quotation, but I'm going to read it in the light of the truth that we know. We must follow the directions given through the spirit of prophecy. It says we must. You notice that? Now, the spirit of prophecy is not only Ellen G. White's writings, it's a rod. When you look at the young cow, we were going to touch on that young cow represents both the former and the latter rain. All right? It's the spirit of prophecy, the published works of the spirit of prophecy. We must love and obey the truth for this time. So what's the truth for this time? Yes, the bound-up testimony of the rod. See? This will save us from accepting strong delusions. Now, if you're just reading a rod, that's good. But now, after 1955, about 1957, the bound-up testimony of the rod inspiring the servant to begin this. And this explains a lot of things that's in the message. It confirms what the message teaches. You see? Binding up. It's confirming what's there. And it's put together by inspiration. God has spoken to us through His Word. He has spoken to us through the testimonies to the church, through the books that have helped to make plain our present duty. So what's our duty now made plain to us? You see? When you read this, how it applies to us also. The warnings that have been given, line upon line, precept upon precept, should be heeded. If we disregard them, what excuse can we offer? Now, what are the directions given through the spirit of prophecy, the message, and the commandments that we are to follow? It's imperative, therefore, that every present truth believer teach and practice only present truth. Teach not short of, nor beyond what is published. Weave not into it private interpretations or constructions, theories and ideas. Many of us have theories and ideas. A lot of times they're contrary to what present truth teaches. Now, and it says do nothing less, no more than what the message calls for. Next, it says, find your explanations in the bowl. How many people go to the bowl? Do you know what the bowl represents? Well, do you know that now what's coming out of that bowl is the bound-up testimony? And that is what's going to seal 144,000 plus. And you will find no trouble in knowing the truth. Why people are having trouble knowing the truth? Because they're not going to the bowl. They're taking their own ideas. Thus, the difficulty, right, in knowing the difference between truth and error is eliminated. What are we to do with our ideas? If we, therefore, this is taken from volume 1 of, our Timely Greetings, number 13, page 7. The other one that I read for, you know what it is, right? Find your explanations in the bowl. Volume 2 of the Shepherd's Rod, page 289, all right? The first one, it's imperative, therefore. Answer 4, page 69. Yes.
We cannot see the screen if you are using slides.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. I'm just reading some notes. Now, okay, so what are we to do with our ideas? It tells us if we therefore fail to exchange our ideas for the Lord's, then we hope. Then what hope is there for us ever to become enlightened and fitted for eternity? Our ideas are to fall flat, and the Lord's prophecies are to stand high and lifted up. That's now volume 1 of the TGs, number 7, page 13. Only when we have done all we can to comply with the requirements of the message for today, notice what it says, for today, right? Not of yesterday shall we be sealed and stand with the Lamb of Mount Zion. Now we have to remember all of this. These are commands, these are requirements, instructions from God what to do, you see, or what not to do. Now we're going to study the last mile and the 42 months. And many people have ideas about this. Do you realize, brethren, that there are already among us different positions on the key phase alone, the 42 months, aspects of this multi-phase subject? Ever remember that this phase of the kingdom truth is the truth that supersedes all truths, because it is the truth which posts our last mile home to our Father's house. As is to be expected, therefore, Satan will do everything in his power to turn our weary feet from the true last mile stretch into any one of many false last mile stretches as he can open up, so as to confront us with a life or death choice at this fateful fork of the road. Therefore, it is therefore now no safety for a single one of us, save in explicitly hearing and heeding only the rod, the Lord's voice crying to his scattered little ones, as it goes forth from prophecies only certified post-Carmel, pre-Palestine, pasturbation. Now this is the only one right now that's certified. All right. Now question. On page 11 of the Last Mile Educator, this statement is made. The 42 months of Revelation 11:2 are the last 42 months, the last mile of the long period of intermittent Gentile control of Jerusalem. All right? Are the last mile and the 42 months synonymous, or is the 42 months only a portion of the last mile? Now the answer, the last mile is the last period of the time from Bashan to Gilead, the kingdom. The 42 months of Revelation 11:2 is the last portion of the last mile home. All right? Did you get that? All right. Now, those who are not established upon the truth, including the rod's preserved truth, will surely be taken in his Satan's snare. No one, brethren, who does not truly accept, believe, and teach all the rod, which includes, of course, all of that which is preserved, can be established upon the whole truth of the rod. Now you see the illustration there. You see the man nourishing the 2 sheep and the young cow. That's Brother Houtef. And you see the canisters beside, on the side there. That's what the preserved truth was preserved in, all right? Now that truth was not taught in the Carmel's time. It was meant for Bashan's time. And it's all interpreted. All the rod is interpreted. All that which was preserved is interpreted. But it was not understood. It was not taught then. All right? You can see the quotation here from track 6, where it says that these noble creatures give such a volume of milk that we are compelled to separate the cream and are able to dispense only it. See? The milk we preserve. Now bear this in mind. All the truth is all of the rod, and a lot of it was preserved that was needed. We needed to get all the way down to the purification of the church. Now I'm going to skip this because I read it. Now here is something that we have to understand. A lot of people are paying attention to events, all these events, and they want to make something of it. That's true, but we're going to read something. I want you to pay attention closely to this. Visions were given to the prophets, which unfolded the events of the future. The overthrow of the oppressors of God's people. Notice that, the overthrow of the oppressors of God's people. The coming of the Redeemer, the establishment of the everlasting kingdom. Now God gave his prophets, he unfolded to his prophets these events. And you can see there, you're familiar with this. You see, you have all these empires, and God's people were involved with all of these, you see. Now, the oil symbolizes prophetic truth, prophecy. Truth that throws light on the future, that lightens the traveler's path. The kingdoms that have gone down, the kingdoms that still exist, and the kingdoms that are yet to come, whose legislations, pay attention, whose legislations involve God's people, have been pictorially chronicled by both Daniel and John the Revelator. Now, Daniel was given half of this world's history, from beginning to end, up to this these beasts here, nondescript beasts in its 2 phases. John was given the other part of the history, from the leopard-like beast all the way to the scarlet. You see, so it covers. Both of them were given half and half, and it covers the whole thing. Now, you'll notice this little beast here, the little one, 2-horned beast. He's the smallest one among all of them, and he's the one that causes the most trouble. The smallest one there, that should give you something about people. Okay, so now what we got here is that the legislations, you see, whose legislations involve God's people. All right? Now, listen to this one. The future is before us, and unforeseen events will surely take place. All right? Changing the present aspect of things in the world. Unforeseen events. What does this one show you? These were events that are going to be unfolded. God gave us the past, present, and the future, right? so that we can see what has happened, that was prophesied and took place, what is happening now that we have to be aware of because unfolded, because we have light on these prophecies, right? So God is, and the future, what's going to happen in the future? Whose legislations involve his people? Now, what do you have here? Unforeseen events. Did you know anything about the COVID? Did you know anything about some of these other wars? No, and many other things. Unforeseen. Now, oppression and hatred will be exercised to destroy, inspired by a power from beneath. Satan's instrumentalities will work with intensity to carry out his will. The wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. But God has revealed all that is necessary for our salvation. He has revealed everything that's necessary for our salvation. All right? We are not to leave the word for the suppositions of men. And this is what people are doing. They're not paying attention. They're not going to the bowl. They're not doing what inspiration says to do. And this is why they come up with a misunderstanding on a lot of things that's going on. Now man may guess, but he cannot predict. That's all he does, is just guess. And the enemy makes him think that because he's doing all this guessing and things are coming, appear to be what they think is going to happen, see? But they really don't know. Now, by the prophecies only can we prove or disprove, know what we believe and believe what we know, and with safety accept or reject any message. Otherwise, our faith can be founded only upon uncertainties, upon a sandy foundation, which will in the end bring us disappointingly to the master's left hand. Now, I read something some time back, and it says, I repeat it because it impressed my mind. A lie believed and practiced becomes a truth to them. All right? A lie believed and practiced becomes a truth to them. This is what happened to many religious associations. They have started with a lie, they believe it, you see, and they practice it and becomes a truth to them. And this is what molds the faith, what we believe, and you carry that in your life, right? So we're going to go over a little bit of this, right? If I go over this and I don't get through, you might have an idea. Okay, we're going to take this from the beginning. Let's start with 1961, the Bashan period, right? And this is going to take us all the way down to the end of the purification of the church, a seat up above. That's the last mile, the Bashan period. And this 42 months is a portion of that last mile. Okay, when we see that we have the sealing coming before the Assyrian Confederacy, right? The sealing, and then the Confederacy. And the beginning of the 42 months, right? Beginning with that Confederacy, you can see there. And that's also has to do with Luke 21, the times of the Gentiles, when it would end. Now, in this 42 months period of the Confederacy, you're going to have Esau, the third phase, Esau, the trouble, Jacob's trouble, and you have Esau, which is going to be his third phase trouble, coming at that time of the Confederacy, all right? And also, matter of fact, during the time the war is going on. So you're going to have now Esau, right? The Jacobites having trouble with the Esauites and Assyria at the same time. And the war is going to be going on at the same time during the 42 months, right? And what you're going to have also in that period coming during the time of the Syrian Confederacy and the war, you're going to have the solemn assembly is going to be called just prior to Ezekiel 9. Now, Ezekiel 9 is a week, 1 week long, right? All right. So now, it's before Ezekiel 9 comes that the solemn assembly is going to be called, and they're going to have, like I said, in that period, or inspiration said, shows that you're going to have trouble with the Esauites. And that's his third and last phase trouble. And he's going to have at the same time trouble with Assyria. Now, during this week, the Ezekiel 9 is going to begin, and the war is going to continue to go on. So Ezekiel 9 be going on at the same time that war is going on, see? And when you get to the end here, Assyria is going to fall right there closer at the end, or a little before the end, but the carpenters, the communists, are going to cast them out of the land, the Holy Land, Jerusalem. That's going to be end there, right there. Ezekiel 9 is going to end right there. At that time, it's going to be simultaneously going on in a sense. And when it ends there, Ezekiel 9 is going to end. They're cast out, and God's people are going to be ready to go in. The times that the Gentiles will be fulfilled, right? And they're going to be the kingdom there. So you have it, and you can see this the time of trouble, such as never was, is going to start after that. Now you got the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Many people don't realize that the great and dreadful day of the Lord begins with Ezekiel 9, but it ends at the second coming of Christ. So all through, when you begin with Ezekiel 9 and you go all through the time of the loud cry, it's still the great and dreadful day of the Lord going on, that period of time, you see? And doesn't end until Christ comes. And Jerusalem shall be trodden of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. The time that the Gentiles go out of Jerusalem and the Israelites go in. The occupation of the promised land by the Gentiles today was typified by yesterday's Gentile occupation of it. And when ancient Israel returned from Egypt to the land of promise, the times of the Gentiles in those days were fulfilled. Likewise now, when antitypical Israel, the 144,000 guileless servants of God, are sealed and taken to Mount Zion, dared to stand with the Lamb, the times of the Gentiles in these days will be fulfilled. When the horns, powers, the Gentiles are cast out of the land, and God's people are brought into it, then the times of the Gentiles shall be fulfilled. When the times of the Gentiles end, that is, at the end of the 42 months. So you see, when the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled, the 42 months ends. The holy city shall they, the Gentiles, tread underfoot 40 and 2 months. Not part of 42 months, but 42 months. The 42 months of Revelation 11:2, not the 1260 days of Revelation 11:3, are the last 42 months, the last mile of the long period of intermittent Gentile control of Jerusalem. It follows then that at their expiration, the treading Gentiles are forever driven out of the land. Hence, with the ending of these terminal 42 months ends the final 42 months of the Gentiles, time of intermittently treading Jerusalem, the holy city underfoot. Though this obvious fact has thus been clearly recognized, what has strangely not hitherto been at all recognized is the equally, if not even more obvious fact that since these 42 months of Revelation 11:2, not the 1260 days of Revelation 11:3, are the last 42 months during which the Gentiles tread Jerusalem underfoot. The Gentiles must necessarily, this is important, necessarily therefore be in Jerusalem for the duration of this final period of their treading it underfoot. So they must be in Jerusalem doing this treading, right? Indeed, their presence there is the indispensable condition, not only of the duration of these Revelation 11:2 final 42 months, but first and last of the start and finish of them as well. All right? Now, the Assyrians, the Gentiles in possession, control of the promised land. That's taken from 14 track. You notice these are going to be taken from various track, right? But notice they're in possession, they're in control of the promised land. The Assyrian, the power which rules, controls. That's another one. See, they rule it now. Certain it is that the Assyrian will control the land. Another quotation again. So this should tell us something. These are signs. All know that the holy city had been trodden underfoot of the Gentiles since 70 AD. Therefore, this 42 months coming as it does, okay, let me go back. Therefore, this 42 months coming as it does after the falling of the latter rain. What is the latter rain? It comes after the falling of the latter rain. So now when you see people trying to apply this before this time, what does it tell you? This comes after the falling of the latter rain. That's number one. Because you have many other people out there who might want to apply it way back. Maybe in 538 AD, or maybe in 70. So now as we go on, it clearly and undeniably shows that this prophecy is speaking of the last 42 months, that the Gentiles will be allowed to tread the holy city. Because of idolatry, the Assyrian was permitted to take God's ancient people and their pleasant land. And certain it is that the Assyrian, Great Britain and her allies, primarily now the United States, will control the land just as long as God's people continue in idolatry. But just as soon as all idols are cast aside, yes, as soon as the great revival and reformation takes place in the hearts of the people, then the Assyrian, the power that now, and he has in brackets 1947, and still today, 1984, and up to today, controls them, shall certainly fall, and God's people shall just as certainly return. The Assyrian shall thus fall, not by the sword of a mighty man, and not of a mean man, but through the voice of the Lord shall the Assyrian be beaten down, which smote with a rod. Now I want to read a few things here. Now fact number one is this. When Brother Houteff gave this study, it was in 1947. When he wrote this, and who was in charge? Who was controlling the land in 1947? It was the Jews. See? But listen, the Jews was in control, right? Of Jerusalem. Now, second fact is this: Britain gave up control of Jerusalem in 1948. Right? Next year. So no longer, right? So Britain, I'm sorry, let me back up. Now Britain was in control, right? 1947. All right? Now they gave up control in 1948. All right? So when he wrote this, it was 1947. Right? Britain, or Assyria, was in control. So the next year now, in 1948, they gave up that control. And who did come to? The Jews. All right? Okay. So now, in between this time, you have an intervening period of time, right? That in which Assyria has to return to control the land until God's people cast away their idols. So we're in an intervening time now. So that means that Assyria today, the United States has to go back. It has to get in that land and control it. You see what it says here? In possession, control. And then the next one says rules. And then the other one says control again. So this is what happened. We're in between that period of time. Now, treading is defined as both to step along and to trample something beneath the feet. Taken from tract 6, page 40. The Gentiles could not step along in Jerusalem, nor tread or trample it beneath their feet, unless they were in the city. They were not there in 1955, nor 1956, nor 1957. And what do you think Sister Houteff was doing? Right? With this 42 months and predicting. And nor up to 1958, and not now, 1984, when he was doing this track, and even not now. Now, hence, these climactic 42 months of the times of the Gentiles did not begin because they could not begin any time prior to 1958 and up to the present. To the present now also. This simple, self-evident fact that the Gentiles must necessarily occupy Jerusalem for the duration of their final 42 months of treading or ruling the city is the one and only key to our correctly understanding when these 42 months begin. Yeah. Now this is the carpenters, the communists. And the Lord showed me 4 carpenters. They are the 4 horns. Both of these are the 4 horns. They're antitypical of Syria, and these are the 4 horns that are referred to as the carpenters, because they are the ones that are going to drive God's people out of the land. And that's why they're referred to as carpenters, because they're doing that work of driving them out. Not that the Russians, or not, I shouldn't say the Russians, but the communists, let's put it that way, so we don't just, they're not going in there and starting building for God's people. What do they know? They don't know anything. But this is what it's talking about when it says carpenter. They're just doing that work for God's people by driving them out. All right? Because some people might think they actually go in there and start building. Then said I, what come these to do? And he spake, saying, these are the horns which have scattered Judah, so that no man did lift up his head. But these are come to fray them, to cast out the horns of the Gentiles, which lifted up their horn over the land of Judah, to scatter it. Here the same powers which scattered Judah and Israel are again seen, not as horns, but as carpenters, not to scatter God's people, but to build for them, to cast out the horn powers of the Gentiles, those who control the land. Plainly then, on one hand, the nations which do not rule Palestine, and which ones are they to be? Which ones are they to be? Are to arise as horns against those who rule it. Which ones will these be? And on the other hand, they are to rise as carpenters for the people of God. Now, the fearful oncoming clash in the Holy Land during the Revelation 11:2, 42 months, between the defending forces of the allied anti-communist or Western bloc of nations, four-horned Gentiles, Assyrian allies, all of that, and the attacking forces of the combined communist or Eastern bloc nations, four carpenter Gentile, anti-Assyrian, will be a gigantic, earth-shaking encounter. I should say counter. This greatest of all wars is to be fought about the Holy Land. Now, all of these should be clear so that we don't come up with ideas contrary to what's written, right? Now, a great final conflict between Gentiles inside Palestine and Gentiles outside Palestine. The outs, the four carpenters, will drive out the ins, the horns, thereby bringing the end of the final 42-month Gentile treading, and hence automatically the end of the long intermittent overall Gentile treading. So it's occasionally, or occupation of the land. Now I'm going to skip this little one below here, all right? Moreover, while the powers of earth are engulfed in a gigantic war, the wicked in the church shall be cut off. So while that war is going on, it's going to go right down. What's going to happen? Ezekiel 9 is going to start, all right? And that war is going to be going on while Ezekiel 9 is going on too. And it says the penitent Laodiceans are separated from the impenitent ones during Assyria's fall, and then are liberated from her rule, the yoke. So we're under that yoke, Gentile, the Assyrian yoke now, right? And we could be liberated. And the nation will be as like born in a day. You know that Israel was liberated from Egypt there, that nation, you see, that time. But here now, we are going to be liberated from under her rule and enter into the land of promise. Now, with the fall of Assyria, Great Britain and allies, God sets up his kingdom. Thus, God's plans. What is God's plans? Are, as we again see, number one, to break the Assyrians, Great Britain and allies, the United States now, in the Holy Land. During the 42 months, Revelation 11:2, of the times of the Gentiles. At, number two, at the end thereof, to expel them from the Holy Land. Then to establish his purified kingdom, his purified church, his kingdom. Therefore, the making of the Assyrian confederacy, the Assyrian nations girding for war, which is to bring their defeat in Palestine. Have you seen any of this yet? Okay, good, I'm glad. Cannot extend into any subsequent 42 months beyond the climax of Revelation 11 to 42 months. So you're not going to have it end and then all of a sudden you have another period coming up, right? Let's see, oops. Okay, now final period for both the Assyrian military yoke on Jerusalem, the holy city, and the Assyrian spiritual yoke on Jerusalem, the church. Now I should read that again. Now, notice what it says, the final period for both the Assyrian military yoke on Jerusalem. This is the Assyrians in Jerusalem, right? Israel, the holy city, and the Assyrian spiritual yoke on Jerusalem, the church. Now, simultaneously, when God is getting ready, He's freeing up the land, He's working to free the land, purification of the church, that yoke that they have on the church is going to be broken at the end, you see, and He'll have His people ready to go there. So you see how it's been timed out, so that when He kicks them out of there, or that comes to an end, 42 months, then that purification also will come to be kind of finalized so He can have His people go. It is to be re-emphasized that the Confederacy commences before the slaughter of Ezekiel 9. Or, to put it another way, after the sealing. Right? And perhaps just before the slaughter. Accordingly, as the sealing precedes the slaughter, and as both precedes the end of the Revelation 11:2, 42 months, then the Confederacy itself must come during Revelation 11:2, 42-month period. So the Confederacy comes during that time, right? It says, not after it, as some are erroneously teaching. And as it is positively known that the sealing is not yet over, and the slaughter is not yet begun, then it is likewise positively known that we are not yet entered into the prophetic period of the Assyrian Confederacy. That's clear, right? Okay. Now this, okay, or into the final 42-month period, right? The times of the Gentiles. This is the all-important fact to correctly orientate all of us right now. That's what inspiration says. And as such, it will, as does all truth, promote and advance unification and sanctification among all who receive it. Whereas the various current teachings that we are now in, or even beyond the Revelation 11:2, 42 months, can only continue erroneous theories that they are, to divide and weaken their advocates. However, even aside from these fundamental facts, which positively preclude the least possibility of time setting, there is the simple self-evident fact, evident basic, that time setting is the setting ahead of time of the date for the occurrence of a prophetic event. Not the pointing out, the publishing, the heralding of it after it has become an accomplished historical fact. Questions were asked, Brother Houteff, did he had any idea about the purification, right, of the church? And he says no, he did not know. He could not tell you that which he did was not revealed to him. But some people want to tell you that Ezekiel 9 is going to happen at a certain time, even though God told the prophet said no, he didn't know. And this is what happened to many people. His wife at that time and some others, given the date of Ezekiel 9. Now what happened? As you know, nothing, right? So this is, so when current events finally confirm as indubitable, unimpeachable fact, the takeover and control of Jerusalem by the four-horned Gentile powers, then God's enlightened little ones will know that the Revelation 11:2 42-month prophetic period has begun. And in the convincing and convicting power of absolute certainty, they will then proclaim it as absolute truth, yet without necessarily knowing the exact day or hour of either its beginning or its ending. This will be the true proclaiming of it, and the true testing in the proclaiming of it. Indeed, not only is the idea of international federation growing more and more prevalent, but in the minds of many great men, there is positive conviction that the successful continuance of their nation's way of life is utterly dependent upon the closest association and cooperation of all these nations which share their way of life. That's why you got these allies. See, the Confederacy, they're coming together. Now, what is it that you think they fear? They're not putting their trust in God. That's why they have to rely on man. It says, the warning given in this chapter to nations and peoples is not to associate and gird themselves or take counsel together, as it will only come to naught. Isaiah 8:10. Take counsel together, and it shall come to naught. Speak the word, and it shall not stand, for God is with us. God's people are commanded not only not to participate in the Confederacy, but to oppose it to all them to whom this people shall say, a confederacy. Neither fear ye their fear, nor be afraid. It is upon the root of some fear that the confederacy is formed. And what do you think they fear? See? But that which constitutes their fear is not to constitute the fear of God's people. Some people would like to put off their fear on other people, what they fear. So they figure that they should fear the same thing. Now, I used to my aunt living in New York, in this part of the city that was pretty bad. She would tell me, don't go over there, don't go to, certain places. But you see, that's what she feared. And so she wanted me to fear that too. So you see, people could tell you certain things, and because they fear that, they want you to fear it also. Sanctify the Lord of hosts himself, and let him be your fear, and let him be your dread. To sanctify the Lord is to be all for him, to have no one else in his stead, to put your entire trust in him. This is what we're not doing, see? Putting trust in man. You're putting trust in what you hear on the TV, when you watch the news, and then you take that and tell somebody else about it. But what did inspiration says about these wars? I bet you had probably a lot of ideas about the Ukraine war, right? Now, so what did it say? Put your trust in him, not making flesh your arm, for he alone is able to see you through. Now remember what we read, whose legislations they're going to be involved. You see, with the legislations that they united, especially this two-horned beast. You're going to see this before Ezekiel 9 and after Ezekiel 9. And you know why the war, World War II, was not ended. And it says yet to be finished. And it's because they allied with an atheistic nation, Russia, right? Instead of putting their trust in God. So it shows that the war is not ended, it has to be finished. And it's going to be finished when Assyria falls. The war that Hitler started is going to be finally finished when Assyria falls in the land. But here we're telling them we to put our trust in God. You see, not to make flesh our arm. And him alone. And what he says, he alone is able to see you through. And though you should be the only one in all the world to take such a stand, he will not fail you. If such be your case, you will then become heaven's greatest hero. As God's people are approaching the time when they must either confederate or willingly risk the sacrifice of their lives, they must be developing that faith, which will cause them to believe that in those days men shall seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. Verse 15, and many among them shall stumble and fall and be broken and be snared and be taken. This prophecy declares that the Confederacy will be a snare and a trap, that many will fall and be taken in it. It will be a fearful trap with death decree teeth, and will separate God's people. Thus is the Lord going to test all his people, and let them reveal just how much faith each of them has. And this makes me think about Peter. Now, in the face of this warning, now notice what it says. In the face of this warning, what does that show you? God has revealed this through his prophecy for us. Right? These unforeseen events, did he put it there? You can see this involves us, whose legislations involve his people, see? And it says, in the face of this warning, we must make them, or the necessary preparation so that we will not fall into the snare. God has clearly forewarned his people so that they will not be taken by what? Surprise. Now, I bet you were taken by surprise when it was COVID came, right? A lot of us, right? You didn't know about that, but even if you knew about it, you would have to do something. But you see, but this shouldn't take by surprise, because he forewarns us what's going to happen. And to make the necessary preparation, that means all of us have to cast our idols away, overcome sin with God's help. Every sin, right? All those who are not expecting the Confederacy, but instead are expecting, I left some out, something else, are going to fall into this snare. For it will appear to them harmless, and perhaps even a good thing, but it will be their trap. And the death decree will drive into it the unwilling but weak. All right? But verse 9 warns that this confederacy will surely fail and fall to pieces. And for us, this is the main lesson in these chapters. We are instructed as to what to expect and what to do about it. As inspiration saw fit to instruct us about many other things that we should be doing or not do. And here is going to show us how close we are. The fifth trumpet, therefore, sounded when Christ came nearly 2,000 years ago. We find ourselves, therefore, living in the period of the sounding of the fifth trumpet. We are in the fifth trumpet. And if you didn't get it, the Assyrian Confederacy, right? This confederacy we're dealing with, and the events that was outlined there. The other one I'm trying, the solemn assembly, the war, all of this is going to happen in the fifth trumpet, the trumpet that we're in, or this period of time that we're in now. And this one phase or one part of this fifth trumpet is still ahead of us, and that's the period, that's the part where it says, men will seek death and not find it. And it tells us that the Christian period before the sounding of the sixth trumpet. Now this fifth trumpet goes all the way down to Ezekiel 9. Now we know there's overlapping, but we're not going to talk about that. But, all right? So the sealing of the 144,000 must take place in the period of the fifth trumpet, and not in the sixth, because the main events of that sixth is going to begin after Ezekiel 9, all right? There's only one part of that sixth trumpet that have started way back there, but the trumpets are like in parts, all right? So what is happening here? We're in the fifth trumpet. Sealing of the 144,000 takes place in the fifth trumpet. And it says, now, but there will yet be a decree before the fifth trumpet ends, that if men dare to disobey, they must face the threatened penalty of death. Those, however, who have been sealed, when the decree comes, will seek death, and death will flee from them. God will not let them die. Right. So it's in this, it's right up ahead of us. This decree comes before the loud cry is made by confederated Assyria. So we have two decrees, one before Ezekiel 9 and one after. This one is before Ezekiel 9, made by confederated Assyria. And the other one, after Ezekiel 9, is actually with the two-horned beast there. If he, the decree that if you do not worship on Sunday or whatever, you'll be put to death. But this one is before Ezekiel 9, and the confederacy comes before Ezekiel 9. Conclusively, therefore, this death decree, time of the third and final phase of Jacob's trouble, caused by the confederacy, is before the slaughter, when he faces this third and final phase of his three-phase time of trouble. So this is the final phase of Jacob's trouble. It will come in that time. And it says, he is to face the soon coming confederacy and Esau. This is the final time of trouble. Now, what do you think is going to happen with Esau? What is Esau going to do? the threat, somehow they're going to threaten us, right? Will be issued by the enraged Esauites, who will press us on every side. Yes, if we have grace by that time. Now, the revived living spirit of prophecy's raw testimony, herein bound up, makes plain and certain heaven's schedule of events just before us, in which we see the true solemn assembly must precede the day of God. When Jacob passes through, Jacob passes through his climactic time of trouble. So, solemn assembly, it will be being called by inspiration, right? During this, when this war is going on, and it'll be a Syrian war, and be Jacob's third and final trouble going on at that time too, during all of that time. The Assyrian Confederacy prophetically rises within and falls at the end of Revelation 11:2, 42 months. So even though we come to that 42 months, you still have some nations that are joining. That causes it to rise, you see? But they're going to fall at the end. We are, however, plainly told that at the time Assyria falls, the Lord will free his people, not only from the sinners in their midst, but also from Gentile rule. See how this is going to happen? It is from the Assyrian yoke that Jacob is going to be made free. And won't you be happy to be free from this yoke? This third, the law of Moses in 3 phases, and that one phase that we're not, the moral phase is what God is trying to help us to see now that we have to live up to. In other words, this binding up of the testimony and to seal the law is actually, we're to see the necessity of keeping God's law, His truth, you see. And this is what God sees fit to give us all this instruction now, so we can see the necessity of keeping His truth, His word. But here, this yoke, we've been made free of this yoke. No, that third phase, one of these phases is when one of the phases of Moses' law is that when we get into the land, the legal part of it, it says it's not until we get into our own land. So it's thinking about that, free from all of this, Assyria's laws. It says Jacob should not fear, because he shall be saved out of his trouble. God is going to deliver him both from Esau and from Assyria by a miracle. If it were not a fearfully troublous time, we would not need to be told not to fear or to be dismayed. It is to be a terrible time of trouble just before Jacob is delivered. To name but a few outstanding concerns, to know authoritatively. Number one, when and how we are to warn the leaders of Assyria. Who will stake his life that he knows now? 2, when we are in the last 42 months, who will stake his life that he knows now? 3, when, where, and how we had to call the true solemn assembly. Who will stake his life that he knows now? All of these. Now, that false solemn assembly was called by Sister Houtef. This true one is in Joel 2. That one that she calls is Zephaniah 3. All right. Only the voice from the chariot of God, the voice of inspiration, speaking through the third gift of the Spirit, inspired teachers. In short, only the ever-living, abiding spirit of prophecy at work. How does the spirit of prophecy kept at work? Through the human instrument. That's what keeps the spirit of prophecy at work. And it tells us that, in short, only the ever-living spirit of ever-living, abiding spirit of prophecy at work in our midst can give us the answers, point the way, set us in motion. It says set us in motion. That's interesting. Maybe we're not doing anything. Right? It says set us in motion, right? Direct our steps. You remember that quotation there in the TG where it says we can't even direct our own steps? What do we need? Right. Now it says, and keep us steadfast through all vicissitudes of the way. And one of these vicissitudes are these unforeseen events, right? That come, we can see. Now, what else? It tells us we need this to take us triumphantly through the portals of glory. So important is the living spirit of prophecy in the church, as the experience of the young man proves, that regardless of one's zeal, sincerity, and integrity, he cannot rightly serve God without it. Now, this is important because you may have zeal, you may be sincere, you may have integrity, but it says without the living spirit of prophecy in the midst, right? He cannot rightly serve God without it. That even one's best work and intention are bound to be at cross purposes with God. Sacred history proves that nothing has ever prospered in God's work without the living spirit of prophecy in its midst. The only safe way by which God's servants and his church can be free from error, full of faith, without guiling their mouths, all speaking the same thing, is a never-erring guide, the spirit of prophecy. Now, I wanted to go back. I have some time. I wanted to go back. Let's see if I can. I think I skipped something here that I wanted to. Yes. This system here, we're in the last mile home. And the 7 tubes, we're in a period of these 7 tubes, which illustrates the last mile home. All right? It's to go all the way down to the purification of the church. Now it tells us that this symbolism therefore points out the system which heaven has ordained for dispensing the word of the Lord to his church. The spirit of prophecy at work is the only remedy against isms in the church and in the world. Under this perfect system of preparing and dispensing the Word of God, meet in due season to his people, there need be no fear that the reservoir will run dry, or that the lamps will grow dim. This is the only system, moreover, that can make the church perfect. It's the 7 tubes that God saw fit, you see? That's going to make the church perfect. Moreover, that can make the church without spot, wrinkle, or any such thing. A perfect people without guile in their mouths, all seeing eye to eye. Now, when you look at this, you're going to see that with this system here, God is going to bring his people to see eye to eye with the truth that's coming from the bowl. Now, Brother Trevor was saying says a lot of things are important, but here you're going to see that when Brother Houteff, God was inspiring him to interpret, it was the word of the Lord unto Zerubbabel. As he took it, inspiration inspired him to take it from the 2 olive trees. It was the word of the Lord unto Zerubbabel, he then. But the word of the Lord unto Zerubbabel today is the truth that's coming from the bowl. You see? And true there. And this is what that truth there, preserve truth also that's coming for us at this time, is what's going to make his people grow into the full stature of men and women in Christ. And it's the truth that he has for us at this time to understand, so that we can keep his law, keep his requirements, keep his law. So without this period here, you see, this last mile, which is important, and this illustrates, it tells you that the work that they're going to do also, and what's going to be accomplished by inspiration here. All right? So as we, I got a few minutes. Oops, I want to go back here. Okay, so now we go back here and review, and we see that the period, the last mile period illustrated by Bashan is the last mile period, and the 42 months is a portion of the last mile that comes at the end, down here, all right? And we have the stealing coming before the Confederacy. And we have also the Assyrian trouble there during this Confederacy, and the trouble with Esauites. Then we also have the Solemn Assembly. All these events taking place at this time. And then finally Assyria will fall at the end of Ezekiel 9 right here, close. Okay, so I think that's about it. All right? And so thank you very much.
Our Father in heaven, we thank you so much for all that you've done during this entire seminar. We thank you for this very clear picture of the last mile home and the 42 months. Praying for humility and even more of your Holy Spirit to continue to bring understanding to our minds of how these events are to happen in chronological order. We appreciate you for giving us all that we need to be victorious. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you for listening. This has been a production of the Davidian Seventh-day Adventist Association. You can find us online at www.bashanhill.org, and you can call us at 417-835-2162.